A lot of people can build an AI-assisted workflow. The more important question is, what happens after deployment? In this video, I'll explain what good looks like after deployment. Testing, monitoring, and optimization. The purpose is to show that we're not build and leave. We're designed for daily operation. I'm going to cover acceptance criteria, edge cases and how we test them, monitoring and measurement, and how optimization is handled over time. It's the kind of work you'd expect with any operational system that affects customers or internal service levels. Now, acceptance criteria are simply the definition of working for a workflow. For workflow like inbound triage and drafting, acceptance criteria might include the workflow always creates and owned tasks, categories are limited to the approved list, drafts include required elements, for example, confirmation, missing details, next steps. Escalations occur when criteria are met. For example, there's missing key data fields. The workflow records closure and the reason for closure. Now, acceptance criteria are written in plain language and agreed with by the business. They can become the backbone of testing and later monitoring. In the real world, workflows fail in predictable places, ambiguous requests, partial information, unusual timing, and exceptions that don't match the normal path. So we built a small test set based on real examples with sensitive data removed that includes normal cases, the most common pattern, boundary cases, the edge of business rules, and exception cases, missing information, out-of-scope requests, conflicting constraints. Testing without edge cases is optimistic. Testing with them gives you confidence. In practice, we test trigger reliability. Does the workflow run when it should? Routing. Does the right owner get assigned? Draft content. Does the draft include the right required elements? Escalation. Are the right cases flagged and routed? Logging. Can we see what happened when something looked wrong? Measurement. Are the metrics captured correctly? This looks similar to testing any automated workflow. AI adds variability, so we put more emphasis on guardrails, constraint outputs, templates, and escalation rules. After go live, monitoring has two purposes: to detect operational issues early and to find opportunities to improve. For many SMEs, monitoring can be light and still effective. It could be a weekly review of exceptions, a check on response time distribution, and to spot checks on draft quality. And spot checks of draft quality, not to spot them, but to do an occasional check on draft quality if there's not a human in the loop. We also watch for drift in workflow, such as new request patterns that weren't in the original category set, changes to upstream systems, such as new forms or new CRM fields, or changes to business rules. It's useful to name common failure modes calmly because it helps teams recognize them early. For example, a request didn't trigger because the intake channel changed. A category was ambiguous and the workflow escalated more than expected. A template needs adjustment because the business changed its wording. Or a downstream integration failed and the task wasn't created. Now, none of these are dramatic when the workflow is designed properly. They are normal operational issues and the solution is usually straightforward. Adjust triggers, refine rules, update templates, fix integration points, and retest. So optimization is not an endless cycle of tinkering. It's targeted improvement based on evidence. So some typical optimization works would include refining category definitions, improving extraction prompts so that key fields are captured more consistently, updating templates so drafts match the business's preferred language, adjusting escalation thresholds, improving intake so fewer requests arrive with missing details. The goal is that the workflow becomes easier to run over time, fewer exceptions, less rework, and clearer next actions. The practical cadence we often use is the first week after go live, have a closing review and rapid fixes. Weeks 2 to 4, weekly review of exceptions and metrics, and then following that monthly, review patterns and decide what to refine next. This keeps the workflow stable while still improving it. Teams also like this because it creates a predictable feedback loop. When this is done well, good looks like the workflow runs predictably, exceptions are visible and owned, drafts reduce preparation time without removing judgment, and metrics show a steady improvement in response time and completion time. Most importantly, the team trusts the workflow. They don't need to hope it works. They can see what happened and correct it when needed. So if you want a second set of eyes on how you test and monitor an AI-supported workflow, you can book a 15-minute call using the link below the video. If you're going to go to an external provider or an evaluating provider, here's some questions you can ask them. What are the acceptance criteria for this workflow? What edge cases are in your test set? What are the most common operational failure points and how are they detected? And how often do you review exceptions and metrics after go live? What changes require retesting? Clear answers to these questions are usually a good sign that deployment will be handled professionally. Here's a general internal reference scenario to make this real. Assume a workflow that classifies inbound requests into a short category list, extracts a small set of fields, creates an own creates a response to review, and escalates anything that is missing key details. Acceptance criteria for that workflow might include 100% of inbound items create a known task. The category is always one of the approved labels. Drafts always include confirmation, missing details, if any, and the next step. Missing key fields always trigger escalation rather than guessing. And every case can be traced in logs from trigger to closure. Now, none of that requires predicting business outcomes. It defines correct behavior. An acceptance test can be as simple as walking through a set of prepared cases. Case A could be a normal request. The workflow should classify correctly, extract key fields, draft a response, and create a known task with a due date. Case B, missing information. The workflow should draft a request for missing details and flag the case so a person can confirm what happens next. Case C, an out-of-scope request. The workflow should select the needs review category and route to an owner rather than trying to force a fit. Case D, conflict with business rules. For example, there's a timing conflict. The workflow should propose alternatives in the draft and route for review if need required. So a small testing set like this can give you confidence quickly. If it fails, you know exactly where and why. Now, a simple weekly dashboard can include volume by category, first response time, and the distribution of the time to like a bit of a plot. Goes back to my statistical background and teaching statistics. The number of escalations and the top escalation reason, and the completion time by category, and the number of reopened cases. This tells you whether the workflow is settling down or whether exceptions are rising. It also helps you spot business changes. If you suddenly see more missing info escalations, it may indicate that a form changed or customers are asking different questions. When something looks wrong, the team needs to answer 3 questions quickly. What came in? What did the workflow do? And how should we have done it instead? So we log the trigger event, the chosen category, the extracted fields, the draft output reference, the escalation reason, if any, and the downstream actions, such as a task created or notification sent. With this record in place, fixes are usually practical. Adjust the rule, refine a template, correct a mapping, or add an exception type. Optimization is most effective when it is tied to a clear signal. For example, repeated escalations for the same reason. Staff editing the same part of the draft every time. Customers repeatedly asking a follow-up question that could have been addressed up front. These signals tell you what to change. Adjust the template, add a standard clarification question, refine extraction fields, or improve intake. This approach tends to feel positive for teams because improvement is grounded on what they are already experiencing. When testing and monitoring are done well, the business outcome is stability, fewer surprises, clearer ownership, and workflows that stay aligned as the business changes. That stability is what makes it easier to expand into the next workflow later.